Hello everyone and welcome back to Sendik's Weather channel. Today we're going to take a look at the latest from the models for the next couple of weeks, which will take us into the end of the first week of April, to around the 6th of April. So if you do enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. I appreciate all your support. There's been some quite heavy showers around today for central, eastern and southeastern regions. There's even been a few areas of thunderstorms around. Pretty interesting and quite rare for early March, I'd say. But of course, changing climate may have contributed to that as well. But anyway, we're going to have a look at the latest from the models, the GFS, the GM, the ECMWF, and possibly even the Icon as well. We'll have a look at the ECM 6-week ahead charts briefly to see what they're showing as well. Because there might be a pattern change on the way. Now, some of you might know there has been a major sun stratospheric warming, and we're expecting, if there were any impacts, to be in about a week to 2 weeks' time. Remember, there's a lag time. The event happened on the 11th of March. We're expecting impacts around the 28th of March. What we'd expect is blocking to take place around Greenland and Iceland, which basically may mean that we get turn more unsettled, slightly colder, but again, it's going to be April. But that's what we're looking out for, really. But at the moment, it's not too bad. 10 degrees as I'm recording this at 8 o'clock. 10 degrees, so not too bad. Well, as you can see, we've got an area of low pressure just sat to the south of the UK, which is contributing to bringing in those rain showers. That's going to sit around. That's sinking southwards, though, so the rain risk will retreat further south and east. As we begin to drag the wind in from more of an easterly, pretty mild easterly, though, because of the time of year. And then high pressure topbles over the top of the country, keeping it quite dry into the early part of next week. It remains quite high pressure, so quite settled actually, until around Friday, where we get a brief northwesterly. Now it's nothing cold, but it is slightly cooler, so temperatures might drop towards the low teens. Then up to the end of March, high pressure begins to ridge out to our west slightly, which probably makes it a bit colder by night with frost and fog. You can see all the colds going into other parts of Western Europe. We're on the periphery of that. So we're kind of avoiding all that, as we normally do. The high pressure does ever go up, migrating further northwards, but the Atlantic's too powerful, and we get a big storm moving in. But there's high pressure pretty much everywhere, so that is a definite change from the GFS run today. We do actually bring in some of that cold air for a very brief time, but it's under high pressure, so quite cold and frosty to start April with this run. Before the Atlantic breaks back through, and it turns very unsettled, especially in the south. But there's a lot of high pressure around, so all the cold air is beginning to retreat further northwards, but it's not impossible to see colder air masses moving in at the time of year. Again, cold air at this time of year, it needs to be bitterly cold if it's going to be anything significant. If it's the -5 line, temperatures in the day could still reach 10 degrees because of the sun strength. So it's just something to watch out for at this stage, but of course it's a long way off, so all is uncertain. Now I'm going to show you the Icon next, just to compare for the next 7 days. So again, very similar. High pressure is just ridging in from off the Atlantic into next week. Tomorrow doesn't look too bad, but could be wet in the south. High pressure ridges in from off the Atlantic and keeps it quite settled and dry next week. Into the weekend, a bit more unsettled with the Icon, bringing in actually some colder air from the northwest, so that -5 line gets into the far north of Scotland. May even be enough for a few wintry showers. Unsure about that though, because of the time of year once again. More of a northwesterly tilt with that one. Then high pressure's ridging back in by the 30th of March. So could be quite cool by night, but probably not too bad by day. But yeah, definitely a bit more of a cooler interlude next weekend from the Icon model. Now for the ECMWF model, we're having to move websites. We're on WX charts, and this one's quite interesting actually. So again, very similar for the next few days. This looks very different, but it's the same theme. So high pressure's still over and just to the south of the country, low pressure's to the north. Winds are in from the Atlantic, but we're pretty settled as high pressure sitting over much of many parts of the south and central Britain there. Low pressure's running further northwards. By around Friday, there's that brief northwesterly tilt to the airstream with a slight ridge in the Atlantic, bringing it slightly cooler air into the end of next week. Before high pressure has another go at building out west, but kind of sits over the top of the country. Could be quite frosty in places, but not too bad by day. Before, right at the very end of the run, we see what we'd expect to be a response from the stratosphere, or the tropospheric response to the sudden stratospheric warming, and begin to drag in some pretty cold air from the east by the very end of the run. See, the temperature anomalies are pretty cold there. And if we have a look at the actual temperatures, you can see the -5 line is moving in to it's covering the whole country, so pretty cold air, and there's quite a cold pool of air. If this pool of air was to get in, it would actually bring the risk of snow, but it's not, because it's so far out, it's too uncertain to say what would happen with that. So that's that one. We'll also have a look at the GM, but we have to switch websites because it's not updated for ages. Again, very similar theme, may turn unsettled around Friday, but for most places, especially in central and southern Britain, next week looks quite dry and quite mild, but then turning more unsettled by Saturday. The GM builds out more of a ridge in the Atlantic, bringing down cold air through much of the country. But then high pressure just sits over and to the north of the country, bringing in a slack easterly, but it's not a cold easterly by any means, it's pretty average air masses. Now if we have a look at the ensembles, this is the one for Manchester. There's a big spread, to be honest. It's the average is sticking around average, but there's some colder runs appearing and also some quite mild outliers as well. So for the next few days up to the end of the month, looks probably slightly above average, with a cooling trend towards the end of the month, with that unsettled theme through Saturday into Sunday, Friday into Saturday I should say. But then it picks up again before temperatures do drop away towards average with a big spread. So we're turning very uncertain, but the chance of blocking could be increasing. Now I'm not going to show you the temperature anomalies, but this is the ECM mean sea level pressure anomalies for this is for the 31st of March to the 7th of April, so the first week of April. And as you can see, high pressure is retreating towards the northern side of Scandinavia. And we've also got a ridge in the Atlantic with low pressure over Greenland and Iceland. So pretty mixed, but probably quite mild actually with that. Although the Scandinavian high could be trying to bring in easterly winds, but they could be quite mild for the time of year. Now into the third week, the 7th to the 14th of April, this is what you'd call a tropospheric response, where we see a proper block between, it's proper northern blocking feature between Greenland, Iceland and Scandinavia, bringing in the wind from the east or northeast, but the problem is, would there be any cold air there? Does anyone really want cold air? Not really. I actually don't. I'd rather have what we've had recently, 17, 18 degrees, than 7 or 8, 9 degrees and dull and grey with a few frosts around. If it's going to be out, it needs to be like proper cold, but that's probably still around average, really. If the block was more centred towards just Greenland, that could bring in more of a northerly or northeasterly influence, which would be cold air. Or Arctic air, I should say. But again, it needs to be pretty cold for it to be worth anything at this stage of the year. So yeah, we'll see how everything develops, of course, and I'll keep you posted. But thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye, everyone.